Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1553 AN. Today's date is April 25th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Central Bank Experiment Failed. Germany Moves Closer to the Silk Road. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, it seems the central bankers, they are continually repeating their message about cryptocurrencies. They are so afraid of cryptocurrencies where the people start to realize what it is. Now, if we go back in time, remember the internet where they said, what is this? This is not going to be used for anything. What do you do with it? And at that time, when it was first being developed and people started to come online through AOL and then eventually through DSL, then cable modems, but in the early stages, you couldn't really buy anything. You really couldn't do anything. You can search a couple things. There was no search capabilities except for Yahoo, which was the beginning stages of a search engine, but it was a directory. It didn't really go out and search different sites to bring back the information. You had to enter it manually, and people didn't realize what it was. And people kind of looked at it and said, I don't know what this is going to be used for. But today, you could see that people have phones. It's all connected to the internet. You can turn your lights on in your home from someplace else. And this is all passing through the internet. You can stream videos today. I mean, think about the things you can do today on the internet. Now, with cryptocurrency, the same thing is happening. We're in the beginning stages where, yes, in the beginning stages, everyone was just getting into it. There was speculation. Let's get Bitcoin up there. Let's invest in this. It'll just keep going up. But eventually what's going to happen, and it's happening already, they're developing all different types of apps that will go along with the blockchain. And this is the very, very early stages. But the central bankers, they're out there in full force trying to keep people away. And every time they're trying to tell you something, it's always the opposite. Now, the former CEO of Intuit said Bitcoin is the greatest scam in history and warned people not to fall for it. It's a colossal pump and dump scheme. He said, I'm tired of saying be careful, it's speculative. Then be careful, it's gambling. Then be careful, it's a bubble. Okay, I'll say it. Bitcoin is a scam. He went on to say, it's the job of the SEC and other regulators to protect ordinary investors from misleading and fraudulent schemes. It's time we gave them the legislative authority to do their job. Now, it's funny that they call this a pump and dump, because if we look at the stock market and we go back in time, how many times has the market been pumped up, then dumped? I mean, think about this for a second. This just didn't happen once. It just didn't happen twice. It happened many times. Now, if I go back to around 1929 and we count, there's about 18 times where the market was pumped up, then dumped. And this was a depression and recession each one of these times. And we're on, I think it's the 19th time where they've been pumping it up and they're going to dump it. So if they want to talk about a pump and dump scheme, they should be talking about the stock market and what the central banks are doing. And they're all doing this because they understand and they realize that cryptocurrencies is a completely different animal. It's not centralized. Actually, centralization, it's completely obsolete. The central banks, completely obsolete. And if we move in that direction, guess what? We don't need the banks, we don't need the payment systems, we don't need what they set up. This is what they're so afraid of. And this is why at every turn you're going to hear them say that this is a scam, this is a bubble, this is no good, stay away from it. I mean, think about what they've told us in the past. Just go back to 2008. The central bankers told us that we're not forecasting a recession. The subprime securities, which were regulated, they're AAA. They turned out to be complete and utter garbage. So let's think about what they've been telling us in the past. And this way we can make a decision on, are they telling us the truth or do they have a motive behind the scenes? And I think, yes, they have a motive. They don't want the people of the world to wake up and see something completely different, a different system that does not include the central banks. And again, you just don't push a button and Bitcoin appears. It takes a lot of time, a lot of processing to mine these coins. Just like gold and silver. Love them both. You need equipment. You need to hone in on the gold. You need to extract it. That is mining. The same thing with cryptocurrencies. It takes a very long time just to get one coin. You don't push a button and it appears right in front of you. It takes a lot of processing power compared to the central bank where they push a button and guess what? The funny money is created in 2 seconds. Didn't take any type of labor. Didn't take any type of mining. Nothing there. And you can see that they're not going to give up. They're going to continually push this. Now, the central bankers, they experimented with universal basic income. And we talked about this many, many times in the past. And they set up an experiment in Finland. And the government went ahead and said, okay, we will do a trial of universal basic income. We will give each person, and they did this test on about 2,000 people, $685 per month without requiring them to work or seek employment. It was just given to them. And after their trial, a 2-year trial, the government rejected a request to extend the 2-year trial program. It didn't work. You know what the people did? They did absolutely nothing. It didn't help with unemployment, didn't help with purchasing, didn't help with anything. And they realized this, and the experiment failed. The IMF is out there, and they are saying, listen, the global financial system is at risk. There's too much debt, credit, leverage, and we need to do something. And actually, when they say we, it means the government. They need to push austerity on the people. And this is the developed nations. This is not the emerging markets. This is the developed nations, the U.S., the UK, Germany, and the rest of the nations. They want the governments to cut and to cut and to cut and push austerity on the people because they want their system to be alive and kicking. Because if they continue on this path, countries are going to start to default. And then people are going to point the finger at the central bank saying, wait a minute, you told us debt was good. Why are these countries defaulting right now? Why are they collapsing under the load of debt that you've put them into? And we can see they're very nervous about this. Now, if we look back in time and we look at all the major currencies and we go back to the 1900s and we look at the mark, the yen, the Reichsmark, the pound, and you look at all of them, they all started out strong at 100%. And then all of a sudden, each one of these currencies started to lose value and they all dropped to zero. If you look at the dollar, it has lost 97% of its value. All these other paper currencies lost their value over time. You know what stayed constant over all these years, thousands of years? Gold. Gold has stayed constant over this period of time as all other paper currencies declined in value. The central banking system does not work. If there's no checks and balances, it doesn't work. Now, the system can work without a central bank if we're on the gold standard. A system can work if we're using cryptocurrencies and the central bank doesn't have a hand in it. All these systems can work. It's the central bank. That is the problem. Now, Germany, they are rotating right now. They're moving away from the EU. They're moving away from the US. And the majority of Germans, they don't want to have a conflict with Russia. They want closer cooperation. And this is reflected in all recent opinion polls. And the leaders of Germany, they realize this. They understand that the people, they want to have closer relations, closer ties with Russia. Now, think about what has been happening with Germany, with the EU, with the US. Germany has opposed the US with Nord Stream gas pipeline bypassing Ukraine. Germany has thumbed its nose not only to the US but also to the EU. So they went ahead with the Nord Stream and the US tried to stop them and Germany said absolutely not. Germany has been instrumental in assisting Russia to freeze the situation in Donbass, in Ukraine. We see that Germany, well, they didn't get involved with the Skripal poisoning. They didn't back the UK claims that Russia poisoned Sergei and Yulia Skripal. Germany, well, guess what? They stayed out of the events in Syria. You know, the gas attack in Duma. Germany didn't immediately condemn And when the Unholy Alliance decided on an attack, Germany did not participate. All of these events point to an easing away from the US, UK, EU. And they are moving closer to Russia and China. Because Russia and China, they are full of promise. They see economic growth there. They see the Silk Road. And Germany is looking to join the Silk Road. What's happening right now is the countries in Europe, when the US said we need to sanction Russia, most of the countries in Europe said, okay, let's sanction Russia, and it hurt their economy. It didn't benefit them. And now they're seeing it as a mistake. And we can see that a lot of these countries, well, they're not joining in with the US anymore. We can see that with Syria. A lot of them were saying, we're not getting involved in this. Germany, Italy, and we can see there's a division right now. And a lot of these countries are going to be looking at Russia and China. This is the transition. This is how it begins. And of course, those in power, the deep state and the rest, they're always trying to pull them back. And the way they do this is with certain events and things to say, see, this is why you can't go to Russia. This is why you can't move to China. This is why you can't look in that direction. But we can see that the establishment, they're losing their grip. And a lot of these countries are going to be moving towards the east. The transition is happening right now. And it's going to accelerate as we move along here. And basically what's going to happen is as we transition, as the system comes down, just like the IMF says, there's just too much debt. They know if nothing is done, the system implodes on itself. They are to blame because most of the countries are going to say, you were managing the system. What happened? You put us into this debt. We're holding a lot of debt. A lot of people aren't working. The economies aren't working as well. Then you're going to find out that a lot of the numbers are manipulated. Then you're going to hear all about the things they've been doing in the background that no one really knew about. It always comes out once everything starts to crash. Just like the subprime securities when everyone learned, hey, they're not AAA anymore. They never were. They're garbage. That all these corporations needed a bailout when they told us everything was contained. And eventually what happens is when everything starts to implode on itself, this is when you learn all of this. Because in the beginning stages, they're able to cover it all up. When it implodes and everyone points the finger, people start to look into it. And all of a sudden you start to realize, hey, look what they've done here. They lied to us. And this time we need to hold the bankers, the central bankers, accountable. And this is why I think the move is going to be made to get rid of the central bank. They're going to push auditing. They're going to investigate. When everything is said and done, they're going to make their move because they need to cut off the funding to the establishment, the deep state. This is the only way to completely stop them is to go after the funding. And to go after what has been basically the enslavement of the people of the world. Because what they've done is they made us work as much as we possibly can while the value of the dollar and the rest of the currencies around the world continually decline. Which means you have to work even harder just to get by. And you have to keep doing this, and as the value of the dollar keeps decreasing, you have to continually work harder and harder and harder. Now, people who are coming into the system, and these are the younger generation, they're realizing, wow, this economy is very tough. There's no jobs, houses are too expensive, everything is too much, and everything is a payment. And this is why many of the individuals are living with their parents. Those individuals, the older generation that started out with the fiat system in the beginning, they're not really realizing this because they were on the upside. We're now on the downside, and they've already made their money. Even though it's losing value like crazy, they don't realize it until they retire. And then once they're on a fixed income and everything continually rises in price, which means the dollar devalues, then they start to realize it, and then they say, oh, I have to get another job just to make ends meet because I can't afford the rent. I can't afford the food. I can't afford anything because my income is fixed now. That's when they realize it. Especially they'll realize it when they're not getting their pensions, when instead of 100% of the pension, they're only getting 60%, 50%, 40% of the pension. This is the end game that we are watching. Wages are decreasing. Countries are transitioning over to the east, moving away from the dollar And this is going to put us in a situation where it's going to be very difficult for many people. And when we go through this transition, just like we came onto the petrodollar, you're going to see bumps in the road. And these bumps are going to be a lot larger than when we went onto the petrodollar, because we have a huge amount of debt and the value of the dollar has decreased so much, and there's nothing really backing it anymore. And countries are going to get wind of this and they're going to start dumping it like crazy. And this is when things start to go really, really badly for pretty much everybody, except those who are prepared to protect their wealth with gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, having food, water, supplies. Because when inflation hits, guess what? You won't be able to afford the food or the supplies out there. This is why you need to have the supplies in-house for a time being. This is why you need gold, silver to protect your wealth. This is why you need cryptocurrencies, because most likely we'll be trading in cryptocurrencies before anything else. So get prepared, get ready. The transition is happening right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.